would say let's get it started. It's not German punctuality, but we're still pretty good on time. So guys, let me quickly say that I'm very grateful to have Johnny here. Johnny used to live in China until like recently, just moved back to Belgium. And when he moved back, I had the first time the honor to have him as one of my speakers. He literally moved back to Belgium, had nearly nothing in his apartment. He was lucky, at least he had electricity and Wi-Fi, and joined us at, what was it, 12 o'clock at night or 1 o'clock in the morning to give a Monday morning motivation speech for us people here in China. So I can definitely say Johnny is someone who does not make excuses. So I'm very excited to have you with us, and the stage is yours. The next 45 minutes, definitely.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Janine. And I want to tell everyone, I'm going to be back, okay? March 1st, on my birthday, I'm flying back to China. I'm actually here to take care of my parents and my son. So it's to help them out during the lockdown here. But I will be back. So I am not out of China. My wife is Chinese. And it's terrible to be without my wife now. But a few more weeks. Okay. Hey, everyone. Let me start with thanking the organizers first to invite me to speak at this event about excellence, because this is actually an excellent opportunity for me to map out some of the things that I've been wanting to share for a long time about what I've learned during my 17 years in China so far, about how to use intuition and energy to hack your brain and acquire superpowers. So I must warn you, this presentation is going to feel a little bit like a roller coaster ride. It might overwhelm you, and I do apologize for that, but it's the only way I can condense this knowledge in 10 minutes. If you lose track during my talk, don't worry. At the end of each slide, I will summarize the key message for you. So please do stick with me, because I need to let you know where I'm coming from to help you understand where I am today. So after a chunk of theory, I will illustrate a very simple practical framework that you can use to increase your intuition and your power to execute anything you want in your life or your business. Also, at the end of my talk, I will give a sign, and the 3 first people who will let me know they want it will get the chance to experience it firsthand for 1 month. I will guide you. And I have one more surprise, which I will keep secret till the end. So, are you ready? Okay, next slide, Janine. I must say that my career path hasn't been a typical one. I did 2 masters, one in genetic engineering and one in environmental technologies. As I had a natural inclination towards languages and human sciences, I decided to study hard sciences to challenge myself. I knew it would be tough for me. And actually, in mathematics, I failed my first exam, and I did feel bad. The professor had a reputation for failing anyone who couldn't pass the first part of the exam, the mathematical exercises. So you can imagine how nervous I was sitting in front of him for the second part of the exam, theoretical physics. So frowning, he looked at the paper that I gave him, and then he said, what are you trying to explain here? Why did you write this? This is not what we learned. So I kind of nervously apologized and said, I forgot what we learned, and I'm not so good at remembering things. So I just wrote down my own thoughts. I see. Explain me your logic, he replied. So I started to explain how I was intrigued by mathematics, how mathematics actually could help us understand physics in ways I could first not imagine. But then when I started to think about similarities between the movement of atoms and vibrations, and then started using matrices, mathematical matrices, to figure out how different physical dimensional relationships are related, then things started to make sense to me. I started to see the logic of how mathematics translates into the physical world and how mathematics can be used to understand physics. So it became a long conversation, and at the end, the professor told me, you failed mathematical calculations, so I can't let you pass. Because an engineer that makes mistakes in his calculations builds bridges that collapse and people will die. So I felt devastated. But then he said, if you were to promise me that you would not build bridges, but that you would find people who can build all the bridges you can have in your mind, then I would give you the maximum score, because you see bridges nobody else can see. and the world also needs that. I still feel grateful for that professor today, as he not only was able to see my weakness and my strength, but he also empowered me to feel confident going forward. And he gave me very practical advice on how I would have to work with other people to become successful. So the first year, I almost ended last in class, but the last year, I ended first in my year. Now, 17 years ago, after an initial career of 10 years in Belgium and a serious motorbike accident, I read a book about China. And I got intrigued about how different everything was from my worldviews. And I wanted to understand it. And I got a hunch that I had to move to China to experience this for real. People thought I was crazy, as I wasn't sent there as an expat for a temporary assignment. I just sold my house and I came over to try my luck. So 2 years later, my new Chinese colleagues, they said I was crazy when I suddenly decided to move to the remote Western China to open a new office for the company. And again, 2 years later, my friends said I was crazy to leave my job in the middle of the global financial crisis to set up a new business from scratch for a Fortune 500 company. And then 2 years later, they said I was crazy to leave my corporate job to start an environmental technology platform for young entrepreneurs. But in 1.5 years, we reached 25,000 people. We did 35 projects. We created 5 companies. That was really fun. So needless to say that when I decided to start the cocoa company in Africa 2 years later, people thought again I was crazy. And I can continue like this. The following 6 years were just as crazy with 3 more changes. Working as an entrepreneur for DuPont, then becoming the only foreigner working in a Chinese environmental consultancy, to then eventually arrive where I am today. So I guess part of me must indeed be crazy. But actually, I take it as a compliment, as most significant change in the world is always inspired by people that originally were considered crazy. So the key why I'm sharing all this with you is that these decisions, they always came from an intuitive hunch, and acting upon them always energized me, giving me not only a great life, but also a great career. Next slide, Janine. So here are some photo impressions. You can see me doing standing meditation, bathing in ice water, doing the Wim Hof method. At the age of 51, I still feel as young as I look in that chair. You can also see my lovely wife, my son, some photos of having fun doing projects globally, working with the European Chamber of Commerce to improve business cooperation between China and Europe, speaking at the annual sustainability event of Mercedes-Benz in Germany. And the constant throughout my career is business sustainability. Now, my current focus is supporting businesses working with or in China around agri-tech, health tech, clean tech, and it involves technology, digitization, and innovative investment. It even includes some real cool stuff, such as virtual reality and artificial intelligence. Next. So, how do knowledge and wisdom relate? In the West, we use an approach of science to grow knowledge. Now, this means that when we discover something, we first try to understand it, then describe it, and then find a way to control the process to repeat it, because then we have proof that the scientific model is correct. Then, and only then, it is real. In the East, we use an approach of experience to grow knowledge. We try something, and if it has a good effect, we try it more. And by experience, we know what works. We do not necessarily understand how exactly it works, but proof comes from experience. Knowledge is passed on via approaches based on accumulated experience, which is a never-ending story of fine-tuning, and so is science. Every model requires an upgrade as soon as the old model can't explain new findings. Quantum mechanics replacing Newton mechanics is a beautiful example of that. Now, wisdom comes from knowing how to implement the knowledge. Wisdom is held and practiced by the doctors of modern science in the West and the masters of ancient knowledge in the East. So in the middle of the slide, you see where I'm coming from. The world of genetics, quantum mechanics, psychology, and so on. In the left bottom, you see a person doing standing meditation, Chandrong. I started practicing this 5 years ago and suddenly started feeling the energy flow in my body, improving my body health and opening the door to intuitive insights, seemingly coming out of nowhere. Now, the scientist in me immediately got intrigued. My Chinese wife started to introduce me to teachers in the Huangdi Neijing. In English, it's called the Book of the Yellow Emperor, and the I Ching, and that's the Book of Change. And those masters seemed to know things about me that I could not understand how they could possibly know that. At first, I couldn't make sense of it. And I also resisted some of the explanations I was getting because I got kind of frustrated and interpreted their vague explanations as a refusal to share with me the details. But they simply didn't understand why this foreigner was wasting so much energy in trying to understand what was so simple to do, because words hardly would be able to explain it quickly anyway. And I believe this thinking is even reflected in the Chinese culture and language, which in the West we often label as ambiguous. But later I decided that this kind of label just shows our lack of understanding, because the accumulated knowledge takes many years to learn and has many interpretations. But the implementation indeed often is quite simple. So I couldn't explain it, but I couldn't also ignore what I had experienced. So relinquishing the need to understand why and how things work is very difficult for Westerners to do. So nevertheless, I still wanted to understand. So I reverted back to my roots in science to see if there's any way I could make sense of this. Next slide. So let's look at a few things we know from recent science. We now know that everything in our bodies is dynamic, even at the level of the expression of our DNA. We used to think that our DNA determines who we are. That is not the whole truth. And actually, it's only a small part of the truth. Epigenetics now shows that external factors can influence which part of our DNA is expressed in which way by producing which kind of enzymes. And this determines how your body gets sick or heals, or even how your body ages, whether your cells rejuvenate or develop cancer or repair themselves and so on. And external factors that can be anything from chemicals you get exposed to, the food you eat, but even your emotions, as these determine the biochemistry in your blood via hormones. And hence, even your self-perception is key in this, as this determines your body chemistry and your expression of your DNA. And more, our behaviors are strongly impacted by the DNA of bacteria in our gut, communicating with our body via peptides. And this, for example, can cause anxiety and depression. You thought it was you having the depression? So, okay, the key to remember from this slide is that negativity and fear are the most damaging emotions to the body, and that compassion and love are the most healing. Isn't that fascinating? Okay, let's go to the next slide. So we now know that we are like a complex, interactive operating system made up of mind, body, conscious, and subconscious. In India and China, we see models that talk about chakras, meridians, energy fields. And based on that, there are all kinds of treatments that talk about balancing, like the yin and the yang. Now, in Western science, we have a model that in fact is similar and that distinguishes between two opposing systems, the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems, with the sympathetic system controlling our fight or flight response and the parasympathetic system controlling our rest and digest response. Now, previously, the mechanisms of these systems that were believed to be controlled only by the unconscious. We would not be able to consciously control them. But most recently, we are discovering that some processes in our body, such as the immune system, which were not considered to be under conscious control, actually can be controlled. The biological processes still take place unconsciously, but what we are now starting to understand is that the mind can consciously be engaged to influence these processes. And one well-known example is the Wim Hof method, where the breath and cold exposure are consciously controlled in such a way as to rapidly increase energy in the body so that one can resist bathing in ice without feeling cold, and also that one can rapidly reduce inflammation and even heal autoimmune diseases. Now, how does energy and immunity relate? I wondered. Now, key to understand is that there are in each cell mitochondria that regulate both energy generation in the cell and that at the same time also regulate part of the immune reaction in the cell. Now, if you look at where the mitochondria come from, it makes perfect sense because mitochondria are small organelles in your cells that are a relic of bacteria entering the cells millions of years ago in some form of symbiosis to help cells create their own energy. So when they entered the cells, they had to suppress the cellular defense mechanism of the host cell in order to be accepted inside, so to then perform their function of creating energy for the cell and hence became part of the immune system. So the key thing to remember here again is that the mind via the subconscious has more power than we thought. We now realize that both energy creation and immunity can be consciously influenced. And as I mentioned earlier, we know that through our emotions, thoughts, attitude, the mind unconsciously influences our body processes. It's therefore very important to choose your perceptions in life wisely, as inner conflicts, for example, may cause autoimmunity issues. Now, in order to address some autoimmune issue that I explained in a very complicated way, an old Chinese master instead told me, go and meditate standing. At first, I thought he was making a joke, but he was very peculiar about how to do it and to keep doing it. It's a little bit like the Karate Kid story, wax on, wax off, if you know that movie. So I did it. And the first thing I experienced is that I could control my own body temperature. The next thing I felt was energy flowing. Later, I learned how that energy actually can be enabled for various purposes via the subconscious. And that is exactly why I'm here explaining all of this to you. Now, the most recent time I used it to address an issue in my body was February last year to heal my hand from carpal tunnel syndrome. In 3 weeks, I got rid of something that I had been suffering from for almost half a year. Nor Western nor traditional Chinese medication helped. My friend's surgeon said the only way to solve it was to get a small cut in the tendons. I just couldn't accept it. But my method wasn't working, and I couldn't understand why until I figured out in detail and was able to do it again. In 3 weeks, it was gone. Next slide. So it only gets more interesting. Our nervous system comes in 3 parts, with the brain, the heart, and the gut, which are connected via a big central nerve through your spine, the vagus nervus. Now, which part do you think controls which part? It turns out there is more communication from your heart to your brain than from your brain to your heart. Makes you think? Also, do you remember that we said in science, Newtonian physics became outdated and got replaced with quantum mechanics? Well, in the same way we used to have Newton biochemistry, we also have quantum biochemistry. So let me explain. Our nervous system works via synapses that pass on signals. We used to think this was just an electrical exchange, but then found out there is also a release of chemicals that have longer-term effects. Acetylcholine is a very interesting example of this, as it labels which neurons will be rewired during sleep in the subconscious state. And this rewiring is the basis of our neuroplasticity, the ability of the brain to form and reorganize synaptic connections based on learning and experience. It's also the basis for changing belief systems. Now, you may remember from your physics classes that electrical currents cause electromagnetic fields. We now can measure these fields. We can read them, and with biotech feedback, we can use them to operate artificial limbs and get computers to write text merely via our thoughts. But here comes the most fascinating stuff. We now know that quantum tunneling is happening everywhere, even in nature and in our body. For example, in plants during photosynthesis. and even in the synapses of our own nervous system, more specifically in the microtubule. Now, what does that mean? According to quantum mechanics, listen very carefully. According to quantum mechanics, quantum states can only be determined by observation and are actually created through observation. That means that before observation, only potential realities exist, meaning that nothing is real until the moment it has been observed. Now, let me tell you something extremely fascinating. Scientists have discovered that anesthesia, when you go and have surgery, anesthesia, which makes you unconscious, also stops the quantum tunneling in your brain. Stuart Hameroff and Sir Roach Penrose's derived theory is that our conscious observation is what creates our reality. Awareness creates reality. I don't want to take you too far here, but for those who are interested to dig deeper, I want to say, look at quantum entanglement and look at the holographic nature of the universe to understand the physical nature of what Carl Gustav Jung calls the collective subconscious. Jung's insight about the collective subconscious came after studying the old Chinese Book of Change. It made me finally understand how the Chinese Book of Change works. Okay, sorry for this complex slide, but the key thing to remember here is that your brain can be rewired and that your subconscious mind is a very powerful tool that can help you understand the nature of things and even to shape your own reality. Can you click one time, Janine? Can we hear a sound now or not? There's no sound, right? Okay, then I'm gonna play it.
Oh, wait, how about this?
Yes. What you're gonna hear now, people?
Inside a neuron singing.
Yes, sound of the microtubule. It's measured.
You can see here he's sweeping the frequency. This is down converted because it would be too fast to actually hear. So this gives the idea that there are vibrational resonances going on inside neurons due to the microtubule. So these are measurements from the microtubule bundles inside neurons, and these triplets occur every several orders of magnitude. Now the high pitched one. Hang on. I'm not sure what this really means, but it's kind of nice. A lot of people really like it. But it's basically what's going on inside our neurons all the time. You know, these vibrational resonances. And one point I want to make is that consciousness is more like music than computation.
Okay. So the first time I heard this, I was speechless. I was actually thinking, I am now listening to the sound of awareness, the sound of reality being created. Anyway, let's go to the next slide. We're almost there. So please hold on for one more slide. Both electromagnetism and quantum mechanics explain many things that before could not be explained. People impacting each other and people impacting reality. There have, for example, been experiments with groups of 1,000 experienced meditators meditating with an aim to determine how this effectively could reduce crime rates in a city like New York in statistically relevant ways. It worked. Can you just imagine that? And this appears to be stronger with low brain frequencies. For example, when your brain lowers from the normal wake, the beta state, with brain waves from 12 to 35 hertz, to the relaxed meditation alpha state, with brain waves ranging from 12 to 8 hertz, or to the sleep or deep meditation state, theta, which brain waves ranging from 4 to 8 hertz, or even lower to delta. Now, one of the most fascinating details, I feel, when people are feeling in bliss in meditation, between the conscious and the subconscious state, their brain resonates around 8 hertz, which, coincidentally or not, is similar to the frequency of the Earth's own natural electromagnetic field, the Schumann frequency at 7.83 hertz. Now, what does that mean for the way we relate to our planet? Okay, the key to remember here is that you, via your subconscious, when your brain is in alpha, theta, or delta state, you can interact more effectively with others, and you can shape your reality. By the way, Can you see how it in fact also helps you better understand even feng shui? But okay, that's enough, because I could go on for hours like this. And I think you got a picture. So next slide, please. I'm very much aware that a lot what I mentioned just now can take you hours to study in detail. And my mom used to tell me as a child, hey, Johnny, it's good you ask questions once, and you can even ask 2 times or 3 times, but you please need to stop asking them or you'll get crazy. But your questions for sure are making me crazy. So without trying to understand everything, I finally concluded to use the Chinese way to not then try explain too much, but to simply develop a simple process that can be implemented based on my own experience. And actually, the engineer in me likes doing that a lot. So this simplified 3-step approach explains the critical steps that I, over the years, have discovered to help improve your intuition and your ability to empower others. And the steps are actually quite simple. The first critical step is to know yourself and to learn and listen to your inner voice. This will bring a certain degree of inner peace, because you must know without this, none of the other steps work. That's why, for example, in December, first it didn't work for my hand, but in January, I figured it out again. I knew what was bothering me and I addressed it. One methodology, by the way, that I did not mention in here, but which in fact is my favorite, is the individuation process by Carl Gustav Jung. Allegorically, I like to call this step seeing the light, because it means getting insight via your subconscious. Now, the second step is to increase the energy in your body, mostly via some of the ancient techniques, such as standing meditation, but it can also be partially done by, for example, breathing techniques. Breathing out slowly, for example, lowers your breathing frequency. Breathing in deeply and fast increases your energy. Combining this with binaural or rhythmic sounds or solfeggio frequencies reinforces the effect. So allegorically, I like to call this step increasing your energy to turn the light into a laser. And the third step is working via your subconscious to use that accumulated energy for a specific purpose. And allegorically, I like to say aiming the laser at your objective. So in each step, different aspects are important. And for each aspect, different methodologies can be used. I only listed a few in here, and the complete roadmap actually covers hundreds of different methodologies that I actually figured out over the years and that you can use to achieve the same effect. Now, I will explain more about the authenticity test in a minute. The Wim Hof method I already explained earlier. The Jose da Silva method, for example, teaches you to consciously move your brain into alpha and theta state and to bring intentions into your subconscious. The Mindvalley group has a very interesting course about this now. Now, I will share some book titles at the end that you can check out for yourself. And again, the key thing to remember here is that these methodologies, they always work at the interface of body and mind, conscious and subconscious. Okay, next slide. The process actually starts with authenticity, which is really a very underestimated issue. Nothing is gonna work if you have a conflict inside, if you're not authentic. And I'd like to ask, do you know what you desire? Because your subconscious lets you experience joy when you are yourself, when you are doing what it is that you're supposed to do in your life. And for many people, this is a very tough question. When you ask them what they really want, they don't know really what to answer. This is because they reach some form of autopilot in their life. Their inner voice is silenced. And these people are the candidates for a midlife crisis. And according to Carl Gustav Jung, unless they address their disconnect with themselves, they will die, feel unsatisfied and sometimes bitter, not having fulfilled their purpose, not having lived their lives. But those who are authentic, or those who are during a midlife crisis or any time in their life are able to rediscover themselves, they have the second half of their life to complete what Jung calls the individuation process. And once completed at the end, will look back at their life with a sense of fulfillment, having lived their lives. So what is it that you really desire? Is your desire coming from your inner values, or are they just coming from outside expectations? For example, your desire of having a car, not having debt, can be internal or external, can be your own, or can be exposed by expectation from society, from others. So the next question is, do you act upon your desire to meet it? The next slide. Because being authentic means acting upon your own desires. If you act upon your desire, you will feel empowered because you are in alignment with your inner voice. Your dreams, for example, will become more peaceful. And if you're acting upon inauthentic desires or against your desires, then you will feel demotivated and will lose energy. It also will reduce your self-confidence, your inner power. And even your body no longer actually can make these processes work that should be working. Now, next slide. On the other hand, being authentic and acting upon your true desires, even when challenging, will not drain your energy. They actually will allow you to grow because you feel that you are striving for what you want and may not be there yet, may not be perfect yet, but you are actually getting closer, getting better, getting more perfect. And each time you make an incremental progress, you are rewiring your brain and start behaving differently. And people also will notice the difference and will also react to you differently. And your confidence grows, your ability to empower grows, and your body can leverage that energy. Your challenges are no longer a burden, but a path of growth. It looks simple. It is simple. And yet so many fail to do this, especially in today's world where there are so many opinions, expectations, impressions, and with people's minds being bombarded with negative news instead of positive inspiration and mindfulness. So next, in the business context, we use the similar methodologies to improve business intuition and to empower organizations with power planning, to strive for a massive transformational purpose. Now, time today is too short to go into a lot of detail of how this is implemented on business, but it comes down to the same thing, and the same methodologies are being used. But let me explain a little bit about one step, step 3, the focus part, which in the business context is called rapid strategic execution. Next slide. Here you see all different kinds of parts in this methodology of rapid strategic execution. It's a process that allows you to develop your business plan on the go while you are processing, adapting, tracking, and documenting your learning, so that in 6 to 12 months' time, you know where you stand with your business. Have a de facto business plan in pocket to present to investors with a clear vision and an implementation plan, and with an overview of your assets and with a credible track record. The only thing you need to do at that time is to formulate your purpose for needing to obtain an investment. So next slide. I am nearing the end of my presentation, and I would like to ask, do you know what you really desire? A simple tip here is to follow your joy. What is it that you really enjoy doing? Please, the next slide. The last 5 years, for example, I realized that what gave me most satisfaction and joy in my life is to first figure out how things work, as you may have noticed, and then share this with others. And then third, empower and create impact through others, like what the professor had taught me. Allegorically, I can say, I really like planting orchards of fruit and then quickly moving to the next orchard as soon as the fruit trees come out, leaving it to the others to pick the apples. In the business context, this means I like supporting business leaders and entrepreneurs to make their early ventures successful. And the key thing to remember about authenticity is, for those who struggle with feelings of emptiness, unhappiness, or feeling of unfulfillment, even uncontrollable anger, frustration, procrastination, anxiety, depression, and even chronic diseases, autoimmune diseases, please try the authenticity test. Because often these symptoms are related to inner conflicts between your conscious and your subconscious, and they manifest themselves via your body or your mind. You will see that your authenticity score will be in line with your level of happiness. You can try it with your family members or with your friends to compare. Next slide. So you can use this tool to find out how aware you are of your authenticity and how much you are acting upon it. And the next step then is to address, of course, any trouble areas revealed by the results. Next slide. Here are some valuable reads that give you a bit more meat to study if you like. These are a few books that I do enjoy. And don't forget, you have to do that. Look at the YouTube link below, because it is sharing lessons from Harvard's longest study on happiness, a 75-year study. It's really fascinating. Okay, Alice in Quantum Land is funny. Next slide. So my present to you today, and the surprise that I wanted to share is, I mentioned earlier, I will guide 3 people to learn and implement the basics of the roadmap. I will offer to teach the 3 people that contact me after my talk first, the basic principles of the roadmap during 4 weekly calls of a half an hour. So time goes in after my last slide. This is not the last slide. I will let you know when. But the surprise is the person who is best in following the commitments during that month is going to get 3 months of free coaching. Going to see what I can do for you. So here are my contact details. Next slide. Make sure you note them down, as you will be needing them. Also, do reach out to me if you want my help. I'm very happy to share some of the tools I have. And if you're interested in coaching, I use the following principles to determine whether we might be a good coaching fit. First is, does our energy match? So I can really engage into helping you as a person. Second, does your project inspire me? So that I can feel it's basically me doing something that I want to see happening myself through you, through your project. And third, can I really help you to create real value, right? Business value, so that it makes sense for you to invest in support. But one thing I do promise, that is, if you contact me, I will help you, or I will connect you with someone who can help. As you noticed during this event, there are plenty of great coaches in our network, and Janine knows a lot of them. When I know what you need, I will put you in contact with the right one for you in my network. Next slide. What is driving me today is what I see happening in the world today. I see so much loneliness and disconnect between people. It's made even worse by COVID, and because of the anti-social media and polarizing politics. It saddens me to see conversations have become hard because of ideological dogmas. So with some of the cultural experts from over the world, I've developed a 3-dimensional framework to diffuse ideological roadblocks. Can you click one more time, Janine? I have family in both East and West. In my world, people approach each other without labels for heart-to-heart connections. That's the world I will help create. Next slide. So what is my next plan? I know you're going to call me crazy again, but a few months ago, I picked up a plan with a new brother to redefine social media via virtual and mixed reality. So if this is something you find interesting, join us. If we already are set to present at Singularity University, are working with the Burning Man community, and are discussing the project with leading companies in virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and are exploring various financing options. So join us if you're interested. And this was my last slide. So if you want to be one of the three, let me know via either of the above mentioned contact channels. I will check the timestamp and let you know who are the lucky ones. And I would now please say, feel free to ask any questions if there is still any time left. Thank you very much. And I hope you didn't get too dizzy in the roller coaster ride. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Johnny. So guys, if you have experienced our sessions this morning, they were definitely different. So now you know why I invited Johnny to come and speak. Definitely make sure you contact him as fast as you can. Take advantage of this really nice offer that he has to get coached by him. And now it's your time where you can ask him any kind of question. We have about 10 more minutes here before the next speaker will start. Who would like to go first? You can use the chat group or you can like unmute yourself. Who wanted to ask a question to Johnny? Don't be shy. The
Feel
feedback
free
is
to also connect afterwards if you are shy to talk, because from experience, I know people kind of need to like digest this a little bit, but it comes.
Yeah.
Hey, Johnny.
Yes.
Hi, this is Casey. I have a question. I really like your comments about approaching each other without labels and connecting people with heart to heart. That's what I told myself how to treat others. But nowadays, I feel that it's quite challenging because when I do this to others, I feel, especially in the office, I feel my boss or some of colleagues, they don't appreciate it. They still like quite close themselves, and I feel sometimes it's really hurt because it's not like only once. It happened again and again. I'm trying to learn how to deal with it, but I want to hear some comments from you as well. Thank you.
Yes. So you must know that every person you're talking with always is within their own state. And a lot of people at this moment are in the state of being limited by dogmas. They are having cognitive conversations, okay, with you in their mind. They can't connect because they're thinking from their own situation. They look at you from the outside. The only way to connect with people is if you are doing something together for a mutual aspiration. For example, when I work with the European Chamber, I see that people at the top level are trying to have conversations starting from an ideology, but you can't connect there. What I try to do via the Chamber again is to create cooperation between people, business cooperations like what you're saying. Mm-hmm. I always try to find a joint aspiration, something that people want. If you have a joint aspiration, then you can start thinking on what can be done. It's when you're doing things with people together that you can find a connection. And this may be one story that I can refer to. It was working with a Fortune 500 company in Chengdu, building a part of an airport. There was a very big conflict between how the US company was trying to do it and how shall I say it, the local people were actually doing it. There was a conflict, and at some stage, they were sitting together during dinner, and they were supposed to have like a good feeling. I told them, I know this has been very difficult, but can you please look each other in the eyes? Because you're gonna obviously see, although you're talking politely, you're gonna see there's frustration, there's anger. So that's what you see in the eyes is real, okay? That anger is the same thing that you're gonna see when you are looking in the eyes of your mom or your brother when they're proud or afraid or happy. That's what you're gonna have to look at. okay? If you can't get that connection through the eyes, then you're not going to be able to work together. So you're going to have to find some way to cooperate that you can see in the other person's eyes that there's really a connection. If you do that, then you can achieve something together. Otherwise, with all due respect, it is not going to work. So I remember the mayor of Chengdu was sitting on our table because he was part of the project. And he suddenly stood up and he basically said, Buddha, Buzhangshi, which means it's in the war you get to know each other. It's by doing things you get to know each other. By suffering together, by happiness together. So I remember the American company looking a bit confused, and I said, you're being invited to try it again and have a drink together because we want to do something together. Suddenly they stood up, everybody basically had a cup together, and the atmosphere changed. So I know this is a long explanation, but the answer is in try to find something that you can do together, whether this is anything, hobby, something that the people like, anything which is their joy, their interest, because that's when you're getting in a different state. If you can get people in a different state, that's when you can connect with the heart. And with our project in virtual reality, we're going to create this biotech feedback in our brain. Does it answer your question?
Thank you,
We
Johnny.
have a few more questions before I go to the questions in the chat group. Kathy, can I quickly ask you, I know that you have been coached by Johnny for quite a while. Very often what people say is, well, I don't have the money, I'm just starting my business, I cannot invest in this, I don't need a coach. I would love to hear quickly before we move on with the questions, how did a coach and how did Johnny especially like change your life?
Hey, hello. Yes, I'm glad I can speak for Johnny. Hey, Johnny, good to see you here.
Eddie.
And
Right.
Great presentation. I contacted Johnny just because I was in a slump with my business. I didn't know which direction to go, especially during COVID. Mm-hmm. And because I moved back from China to Belgium as well. And so I had no direction. It was very messy in my head. And Johnny immediately gave me direction. And so my business moved very quickly. I thought it would take a long time, but within a couple of months, I knew which direction to go. Opportunities started to come. The right people came into my life, and then he coached me personally as well. When I felt overwhelmed, when I felt a bit down, he was there to encourage me and to even with the relationship, because my husband and I, we do the business together. So if there are, of course, there's stress in the business, then as a couple you have struggles, and so he's helping me on every aspect. So even with COVID, if you don't have a lot of money, it's really worth it, because, well, really, I thought it would take months to a year to get my business back on the rails, but with him, it was just in a couple of months. So yeah,
wow,
really recommend him.
Congratulations on this. So guys, either way, make sure you connect with Johnny. Johnny is great to follow, to stay in touch with. We just heard apparently he's an amazing coach too. Thank you so much for sharing this, Kathy. Well, I guess we all sometimes have to invest in something so that something bigger and faster can come out. Let's go back to some more questions. Eve was asking, Johnny, could you elaborate on the anesthesia example and its linkage to the unconscious state? How do we discover more on our unconscious patterns? Carl Jung's method and more.
Okay, so
Did you
help me to
understand
understand the question.
again?
Is it the physical part that you want to understand, or is it the process of dealing with those subconscious beliefs that you want to understand? Okay, both. So the physical part is like this. So in your brain, right, there's microtubuli. And these microtubuli, let me say it in a very simple way, there's electron tunneling. There's electrons going, and actually this is a quantum effect when it's happening. And when they vibrate at some stage, that's actually when the quantum formula is solved. And when the quantum formula is solved, it goes from potential stage to one final state. That is what's happening in the brain. Now, this is a continuous process. And with anesthesia, certain molecules where electrons can actually flow and resonate together, in a very interesting way, this stops. Okay? Then also is exactly the moment when you become unconscious. So the consciousness is directly related to that quantum tunneling happening. That's one thing. The second thing is the process with Carl Gustav Jung, individuation, is basically that you simply address your shadow, which is something you're not aware of. You can very easily discover by what kind of upsets you in your closest friends. It's also addressing, dissolving the persona, and it's understanding the animus and the anima. This is a process you can do. Now, this is partially consciously, but you know, actually, often these things are hidden because they're part of your programming, your subconscious. Okay, so by following certain steps, you can make these conscious, and then by doing this in the process where you, for example, look at your dreams or where you do meditation or whatever, you kind of make your brain to rewire around some of those things that part of your aspect. Jung has nicely conceptualized these, but it is by addressing these aspects that you can rewire your beliefs. I know this sounds very theoretical, and this is always the problem, like what I tried to explain in the beginning. It's hard to explain, but it's actually very easy to implement.
Okay, I would say we slowly gotta finish it now to make sure the next speaker can move on. I know we have a few more questions in here. Maybe we can take the last one and you just do it quicker.
Okay.
Like question by Natalie. The carpal issue that you had, was this an energetic or emotional manifestation or a subconscious belief that manifested physically?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I have to be sure what caused it. I don't think it was something psychologically. I think it really was mechanical because I was playing my phone way too much. But the ability to heal it through my body, through my energy here, was in the beginning limited because I wasn't feeling happy on the inside. I was struggling with making an important decision in going to a new direction, and I wasn't doing that yet. So I had kind of like an unbalance on the inside. So that's why I could not get the energy to flow. Once I actually understood what I had to do and I acted upon it, it's very strangely, but then suddenly the feeling came back, and then my own body processes then can basically take the energy, which you can increase, to then heal the mechanical issue. So does that answer?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I've done something similar, actually. That's why I was curious to know what you went through, or yeah. But what I went through was actually the condition that I had was something that was a result of something emotional or energetic. But through using energy, I guess I healed it in a way. So yeah, but yeah, I had to get that energy to flow. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is, this is really, your question is a very good one to understand, because you see, the mind can cause something in the body, and the body can cause something in the mind. And one can be the first, but the key thing is you need to balance them. This is like beautiful, right? This is the yin and the yang. But now in science, we know that they are related as well. So by one, you can influence the other. So by doing things in your body, you can influence your mind and your body chemistry, and vice versa. With your mind and your energy, you can influence processes in your body as well. So it truly is like a dance between subconscious and conscious, body and mind.